It's my pleasure to introduce the Blockfather himself, the founder and CEO of Avalanche, Dr. Emin Gün here.
Get to know my audience a little bit. So could you put your hand up if you're an AVAX holder, AVAX hodlers? Hands up if you're a Bitcoin hodler. Hands up if you're an Ethereum hodler. Solana? Cardano? Ripple? Okay, awesome. And hands up if this is your first summit. How many first summit? That's amazing. That's fantastic to see so many new faces. So what I want to do today is tell you a little bit about where we are and where we're going to go. And for that, I think what I want to do is essentially tell you my story. And it's the technical version of my story. I'm not going to go back to my childhood. I'm not going to go back to like what really created this, that's sort of the villain creation story, the hatred for the system, the hatred for things that don't work, and the sort of the crazy obsession with building large systems that do what they say they do. I'm not going to touch upon that, but I want to get a bit more technical and tell you how I started down this path. The year was 2002. And how many of you were downloading stuff from Napster and LimeWire? I know you were. Hands up. But I know there are more hands that need to go. The statute of limitations has expired, so it's all good. So how many of you were uploading at the same time? Now, be honest. So far fewer hands. So the problem then, as the problem is often with groups of people, people want to take things and they don't want to give things, right? This is known as the tragedy of the commons. Everybody wants something, and when it comes to giving that thing, it's a little harder to get to happen. So my idea back then, as a very, very young, freshly minted professor at Cornell University, was, well, we need to do something to incentivize people to give resources to the community pool, and somehow disincentivize people who constantly take things. And the idea then, of course, there were many ideas. You've heard of BitTorrent, which is based on barter. For me to give you a block, you have to give me a block. And I thought, barter is so archaic. Why don't we invent some kind of a magic internet token so that if you wanted to take something, well, you couldn't just constantly take it. On occasion, you'd have to earn that token back by doing something good for the community. So in 2002, I built this system called Karma. And Karma is the world's first digital currency with proof of work minting. So parse that a little bit, it's 6 years ahead of Bitcoin. Now, let's be very clear, I did not have the brilliant insight that Satoshi added later, which is that insight where he folds the consensus protocol into Karma, into proof of work. But nevertheless, this is what got me started on this path. Somehow, though, my mentors at the time told me, do not touch this topic. It's toxic. The regulators will come after you. Everybody's concerned in the post-9/11 world with all sorts of things like money laundering, etc. You can't make a career out of this. So I left this area, and I kind of just did a whole bunch of other things involving peer-to-peer systems and so on. And then Bitcoin came along. Who remembers the first time they read the Bitcoin paper? It's like your first kiss you can't forget. It's like all of you, almost all of you, I'm sure, remember how that was. And for me, it also was an eye-opening moment. And you know, what did I see there? I saw a new family of consensus protocols, very different from the ones that were taught in graduate school. And it's just a much better way of approaching that probabilistic idea of consensus so beautifully done was something that captivated me. And then the next thing, of course, is there are a whole bunch of things that people take for granted. There are a whole bunch of asserted truths in that paper and in the writings of Satoshi Nakamoto. And we didn't have proofs for them. And to an academic, if there are claims but no proofs, that's very dangerous territory. And if you're going to build sort of the next generation of finance, you got to have proofs. And when Itai Ayal and you know, the postdoc at Cornell at the time, and I looked at Bitcoin, we saw that some of the claims were actually wrong. And we came up with something. How many people have heard of selfish mining? That's too few. So we came up with something called selfish mining. So if instead of following what Satoshi told you, you don't follow what he says, but you follow a different strategy for mining, then you could make more money than your fair share. How much more? Up to 2x more. So if you have 49% of the hash power, you could actually make 100% of the Bitcoin rewards. So this, of course, is heresy. It implies that Satoshi made a mistake. And of course, for that, I had to be roasted. I got death threats. There were efforts to write a whole bunch of letters to Cornell to fire me. And there's a whole bunch of things that happened. It was really stressful, but also very funny. And thank God for tenure that I could just sit back and watch as the letters came in. And there were 3 different projects that people crowdfunded. And we were like, Itai and I were just sitting in the office thinking, we did the work. Why are these people trying to, like, just crowdfund this effort to show us wrong? It's like, prove that Emin doesn't know what he's doing kind of an effort. To their credit, all 3 of those projects flipped at the conclusion of their efforts and said, you know what, every time we try to prove them wrong, we get the same results as in the paper. This is a thing. And so I went from being persona non grata to suddenly people realizing, hey, these people don't want to just undermine our profit. They work for the same God. They are here to push the cause of cryptocurrencies. They're good people who are trying to show the actual security properties of Bitcoin so that we can more securely deploy these systems. And after that, I worked on something called Bitcoin NG, Bitcoin Next Generation. So as you know, with Bitcoin, it takes about 3 to 6 confirmations, about 30 to 60 minutes for your transfer to be finalized. That's a hell of a long time. At the time, it was amazing, right? It's far faster than sending a wire by bank. But yet, I knew we could do much faster. And the core idea here is kind of interesting for those of you who did not follow the Bitcoin NG saga. The idea is we still use proof of work, but normally Bitcoin uses proof of work to immortalize what happened in the last 10 minutes. Instead, we use proof of work to elect a leader who immortalizes transactions as they happen. And that changes the game immensely, and suddenly the finality of Bitcoin goes from 30 to 60 minutes to something much, much, much shorter. And I learned quite a bit actually from this effort. There were 4 different projects that use Bitcoin NG. I had almost nothing with all of them. But I saw that if you have a good technical idea, if your execution is not good in other ways, you don't necessarily win. And these Bitcoin NG-based systems are nowhere to be found. They still exist, but they did not see big success because the execution was flawed in various different ways. Then I worked on these elusive concepts, scalability and decentralization. These words are thrown around the whole time. It's essential for us to be decentralized. It's absolutely imperative that we build decentralized systems, or else we're just replicating the banking world with more steps and more complications. But then what is decentralization? How do you measure it? And I answered, I did a bunch of things. So what does it mean for a protocol to scale? Like, what does that actually mean? If somebody talks about scalability, but they don't really talk to you about the two different metrics that relate to each other. As something goes up, the other thing should not go up. As you add more nodes, latencies should not go up. If they are not talking in terms of multiple metrics, they're not talking about scalability at all. TPS is not a good measure of performance. I can give you as high TPS as you want. In fact, look around at other competing projects. They do this all the time. Just by embedding a hash of the phone book, I suddenly have incorporated the entirety of the phone book into my system. That doesn't really get us anything. You have to assemble the data. You have to process it. You have to validate it. So it was a big push at the time against the forces that be to say TPS is not correct. It's not the only metric. You have to also, besides throughput, you also have to look at finality and time to finality. And so what's the difference between POW and PAWS? I think this was an interesting one. Even my academic colleagues were confused, and they kept referring to proof of stake as if it was a consensus protocol. These are not consensus protocols. I was the first person, I believe, to my knowledge, that made that distinction crisp and clear. And we did some other fun stuff. One of the things that we did do was to measure the distances between Bitcoin miners. This is a little hard to do. We borrowed techniques that physicists use to to discover exoplanets. You take a gazillion measurements, and from tiny variations, you discover, oh, these two guys are actually the same people in China pretending to be multiple different miners. Or these two guys are fairly far apart, etc. So then I was involved in the DAO Hack. This was kind of fun. I wrote a paper called A Call for a Moratorium on the DAO. So the call was not heeded. And how many people know the DAO Hack? Is it all ancient history by now? It's been 9 years or something. So the DAO Hack was monumental for Ethereum. We identified 9 flaws. There was a 10th one that, I thought, hey, maybe this is not a flaw. I was wrong. That was a big flaw. So the hacker used that one and one of the 9 that we identified to steal 15% of Ethereum out there. So that was a terrible, terrible time, and I helped recover after that. It turned out that Vitalik and Vlad were both in Ithaca. We were running a project, a summer camp together. So you might have heard about Bitcoin covenants. And vaults, one of the things I worked on was this thing called covenants and vaults, which keep coins safe at rest. So when your coins are in cold storage, you want them to be unstealable. And we discovered or came up with this idea of hack-proof vaults, where if the coins start moving, you can recall them ahead of the hacker. And so it's a way to add security to coins at rest without breaking down the immutability of the Bitcoin blockchain. Anyhow, I don't want to bore you, and we're coming to the end of this. My journey took me to where it almost always takes a lot of people, which is, what about layer 2s? They suddenly became very prevalent about 8 years ago. And everyone who runs out of tools in their tool chest, everybody who runs out of ways to scale their system, decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spike this ball and let somebody else handle it because I've run out of options. Layer 2s are a concession to say that I am unable to take this thing any further. I can't scale it at my own layer. I'll let somebody else take it from here. And the thing, of course, with turtles all the way down is, if you don't know how to solve something, chances are that somebody else is also unable to solve that very thing. So I never believed in layer 2s, and the fact that they fracture liquidity is absolutely a killer. The more layer 2s you have, the less liquidity you have concentrated on any one chain. But much more importantly, they fracture communities. Communities divide and fall apart. People's incentives separate, and different communities splinter away. Every layer 2 becomes a parasitic thing on its underlying chain. And you see this playing out. I cautioned Vitalik against this, but we see the results today. So what did I do? Well, I said, well, look, if you guys must have this thing, and if you want to build something like the Lightning Network, which has all these terrible properties that I don't believe in, let me show you how to do this right so that you build fast layer 2s. And we built the world's fastest layer 2. It's still the world's fastest layer 2 umpteen years later. It's called T-Chain T-Chan. And it uses hardware security modules. And I think we invented the world's fastest way to get Bitcoin. We did something with the University College London here. We sent Bitcoin from UCL to Ithaca to Cornell in about 50 milliseconds or so. So, but the thing that I'm most proud in all of this time is the work I did with the John Oliver Show. I'm an uncredited writer in one of the episodes, and I introduced the word hodl and wrecked into that show. So if you are using that, if you think that's mainstream, I had a tiny, tiny hand to play in making those words go mainstream. They did so much due diligence. They did more due diligence on everything I said than any other press outlet that I've ever worked with. They're amazing. And if you do listen to that episode, listen to him carefully. He does sound more like me, like the sentences are a little longer, a little stilted. It's not exactly like him, because every single word came from me there. Except some of the jokes, the funny ones, those are from them. So, what happened then? And this is what brings us to today. Ultimately, that journey took me to the fundamental realization that we need to address the problem at its core. We need fast consensus protocols. You can't punt it to someone else. And if you as an expert don't know how to do it, then nobody else will solve it for you. And that took us to Avalanche Consensus, which is a new family of consensus protocols. It's impossible for me to underscore how rare that is. My field of distributed systems is only 50 years old, And there have been only three families of protocols: classical, proof of work as in Bitcoin, and now Avalanche. It is the fastest, it is the most scalable, and most importantly, it makes no compromises on that which matters most, which is decentralization. And achieving those is incredibly hard. Everybody else, other than us, every single chain out there compromises on decentralization. It's easy to build a proof-of-stake coin if you reduce the number of people who are participating in each decision. So trivial. I just say, hey guys, you 10 are the ones who are making the decisions. Done. And that's what really they do. It's like you 10, and then the next round is like you 10 over there. That's okay, but those 10 people are a vulnerability. And they are no longer decentralized because that decision got made by a small sub-quorum. Now, you can't do that. It's just not in the crypto spirit of things. And this is true for every single chain out there but us. So, this was such a big breakthrough that I thought I don't want the Bitcoin NG experience again. It is such a big breakthrough that I can't punt this to other people to carry out. They will screw up something else. They will keep so many coins for themselves that it's going to die. They will do some dumb thing. They're going to lose their own coins and tank the system, etc. This has to be done properly. Someone has to show the world that that is being sold, the dream of highly scalable, super fast systems, is achievable. So to do that, I left Cornell. Everything else that happened after that is all you. I'd love to take credit for where we are today, but everything else, other than the initial formation of the protocol, is all you guys. So, what does that mean? Well, we introduced infinite scalability. There are only 3 systems that tried to do what we did. It's us, Cosmos, and Polkadot, which was build a system that is not just a single chain, but a collection of chains. And of these 3, we're the only ones that did not introduce artificial bottlenecks. You get pelted with questions as a founder. How are you accruing value? How are you doing this? How are you doing that? And to appease those cracked voices, people end up making crazy compromises. How are you, like, for example, not making sure that everybody is as secure as everyone else? A lot of these questions come from a good intent, but the framework is wrong. Polkadot, for example, tried to have what they call shared security. What that means is a shared bottleneck. So they have to have these parachain auctions, etc. They raise some money from it, and then they run out of that money. It's just not a good way to create value or enduring systems. We came up with a way where every time somebody introduces an L1, the capacity of the system grows. Every time somebody wants to build a system that's bespoke for a particular use case, they can. They're not hampered by other validators. They share just as much as they need to, and no more. And we built interoperability from the ground up. We're miles ahead of every other chain out there, every other protocol out there in terms of interoperability. What they are trying to tackle now is something that we've already done and gone. If you want to create your own token, you can. If you want to take your token and use it as gas, you can. If you want to build your own L1 powered by your own token, you can. These are things that we started out building because we realized just how important they were. So now what we're working on is single chain performance. It's time for us to focus on the engineering of a single chain. Now, one of the things that we did recently, that some of you may or may not know, it was the Etna upgrade followed by the Octane upgrade. That's 2 upgrades. One was in December, the other was in April. Compare that to projects that ship every few years. We shipped 2 major upgrades within 5 months. One of them made it really, really easy to launch our own L1s, and the second one completely changed the way gas dynamics work so that we now have the world's fastest, cheapest EVM. Transactions are typically less than a penny and often less than 1/100 of a penny. So here we are, just shortly after these 2 upgrades, and we have many more in the works, and I'm really excited about the technical roadmap that Corey shared with you earlier today. Each of these are bringing the best of scientific breakthroughs to blockchains. And one of the most important ones in this regard is the Async Execution, ACP 194. So what it does is it extracts parallelism on a single given chain. It allows the consensus portion of the process of accepting a transaction to be performed in parallel with the execution portion. And you will probably have heard of efforts to build new chains that try to, quote, extract parallelism. Those people are trying to build a single chain where they're trying to get some parallelism somehow, but it's really essentially a sort of a feeding off of breadcrumbs kind of an idea. We extract coarse-grained parallelism, the easiest kind to extract, very, very cheaply. You can have as many chains in parallel as you like. Nobody else comes close to what we do on that front. And on top of that, on a single chain now, with async execution, we will extract micro parallelism to get even faster speeds and even higher throughputs. There's also a big push for changing the way we store data on a blockchain and the way we organize the data on disk in a database. So first of all, we're reducing the amount of data that we put on chain, on the nodes. The node state growth is, if you do the naive thing of storing everything forever, of course is going to be very, very difficult to deal with. So we're reducing all the redundant data. We're building lighter clients that make it really easy to run validators. And we're introducing state rent and tiered storage for identifying the hot data from the not so hot data that can be stored in tertiary storage. On top of this, we have a new database called Firewood. Everybody else in this game uses a database built by Google for the purpose, almost everybody else, uses a database built by Google for the purpose of storing your bookmarks in your browser. We're changing that. We're bringing a proper new database built from the ground up for blockchains. This database performs Merkleization as a matter of storing data on disk. It's not an afterthought. It is not something you add on as a layer. It's not something that's expensive that you add onto an oblivious infrastructure. So that is going to give us performance that other chains can only dream of. And finally, those of you who did come to the summit maybe 2 years ago might have heard me talk about something that I'm super excited about, which is the marriage of AI with blockchains. It is time to make it easy to write code for blockchains. It's time to open this field up to everybody. And we're not going to be able to do that if we force everyone to be a programmer. We're not going to be able to do that if we force everybody to learn Solidity, as nice a language as it is. I happen to like it quite a bit. It's just not going to happen for the folks at large. For that, what we're doing is building chains where every validator runs an embedded LLM. And the chain transaction format is not bytecode, it's not a virtual machine, it's free-form text. So you can write transactions like, I hereby give you $5,000 for your movie if you can raise $5 million by next, September. You just write it out in English, or Tagalog, or German, whatever your native tongue is. And then the LLM interprets it for you as if it's a trusted execution engine, as if it's a trusted executor. Kind of like a lawyer in the sky, but has no conflicts of interest. Of course, as AI gets smarter and smarter and has a mind of its own, we will run into issues. But this is something I'm really, really excited about. It's a moonshot. It may or may not work, and we will probably lose a bunch of money experimenting with it. But it's going to be well worth the effort, because otherwise our field is not going to go to the masses. Let me wrap up by talking to you about what we are not doing. Because often communities are defined not just by what they do, but by their ethos that prohibits them from certain things that really are a no-go zone. We do not cut corners. We do not cut corners. And I cannot say this enough. We do only sound, scientifically sound, properly documented, properly understood efforts. The Avalanche system could have gone out the door many years ago, but it didn't. It needed that proof set that came from Team Rocket. We do not compromise on crypto principles. It's easy to build something that's centralized. It's so trivial, but what's the fun in that? That's not what got us started here. It's easy to build something that's hidden behind layers that require $50,000 per validator, etc., that supposedly goes fast. That's not what we're about. We do not build for fair weather. All of you have seen Flugtag, those like things that people create and they launch them off of those ramps in Germany. You can build something that flies, on a good day with the wind on its back. But when the load comes, it croaks. And then what do? You download your state from Google Cloud to rebootstrap your system. That's not the Avalanche ethos. And we do not constantly bait our community with things to come. We don't want to wait for Godot. There is no crypto shiny object that's going to come and save the day and deliver the promised land to us. We build stuff that works based on sound science. And I'm really, really proud to have attracted, as developers on top of Avalanche, people who share this ethos of actually building things that work. To wrap up, half of what brought us here was this belief in science, to apply the best we know from academia to blockchains. We ended up with the fastest consensus protocol with the most scalable architecture. We're now working on improving the engineering of single chains so that we have the fastest, most decentralized chain for any given use case. The other half of what brought us here is the community. And for that, I am grateful to you all, and I cannot wait to see and hear about all of the cool stuff that you all are building today. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me today.